listen, I'm not Nostradamus, but I predicted before camp that we were going to be impressed by the newcomers. It didn't take a Mensa to project that kids that were recruited to Alabama would come in here and look impressive, like they could fill the role that they're being asked to fill. You bring in an Alabama running back. I'm not surprised. He looks like he's a really good running back. You bring in an Alabama wide receiver. I'm not surprised. He looks like he could be a really good receiver. You bring in an LSU wide receiver. I'm not surprised that he looks really fast, athletic, and like he might be a really good college football player. You bring it, like, you get where I'm going. I'm just not shocked by any of this. And we already knew that they had, Darrell Jackson and Josh Farmer were coming back. We knew this. Yeah. Once we found that out, I felt really good about our interior of the defensive line. I still do. I suspected that Marvin Jones Jr. might look like he's got some what for to him, given who his dad was, given that he was a 5-star, and given that he was recruited to Georgia. Just seems to me that he would probably look like a guy that could come in here and play, and he does. And so on, and so on, and so on. Earl Little Jr., which right now not in contact, but doing covering drills and that ilk. He's wearing the green jersey. He can fly. He looks like he's going to be a good football player for us and a candidate to be that nickel corner, right? Your veterans that you knew were coming back, that you were excited about. Azariah Thomas, for example, looks like a guy who's poised to have a great year. Patrick Payton, who you knew needed to put on a little bit of size, but his trajectory was that of being an all-conference player and maybe an All-American. Perhaps a top 2-round draft pick. That's what we've thought in our head is the direction he's going. He's long. He's athletic. Old batted balls Peyton ain't having that nonsense. Now that he's gotten bigger, he can play the run better. He's still quick off the ball. There's just no reason to believe that Florida State won't be a very, very, very good football team. And that's how I still feel. I think there's work to do. I think that DJ's got a long way to go in getting acclimated to the offense. But the physical tools are all there. He's very mature. He's a hard worker. He's dedicated himself to the task. So why would we be worried? I'm not worried. I believe in Coach Norvell. I believe in Tony Tokar as the quarterback coach. So they're going to get him ready. He's not ready right now, but they're going to get him ready. And I think Brock Glenn's going to continue. That's one guy we haven't talked about today. He had a good day yesterday, and I'm not surprised. Brock Glenn showed tools and abilities a year ago, including in that ass kicking against Georgia, that suggested he was going to be a really good player for us. I think he will be. I think he's going to continue to push DJ, and Luke will push Brock. So we're going to be in a position where that quarterback room has been transformed, where you got 3 legitimate players at the most important position fighting for time. This is good. This is a really good situation. I have questions that I had before camp, but they haven't changed. The question mark about who's going to block as an inline tight end. We really don't have the requisite size and strength there. Still have that concern. That's not going to change. It's one of my concerns. Do you have enough depth of talent at linebacker? Is it skilled enough? Still one of my concerns. Maybe less of a concern than I had going into camp. That might be one area where I'm feeling a little bit better, but it's still a concern. I think that's probably an area of weakness on this team, and it still remains to be true. Haven't seen enough so far on the offensive line to think that they're worlds better than they were a year ago, but I haven't seen anything that makes me think they're worse. So, yeah, man, I assume they would be loaded at running back. They're loaded at running back. I assume that they'd be good on special teams. They're going to be good on special teams. Nothing's really changed for me.
I think for me, one player that stood out, and it might just be because of the aptitude last year, the necessity of him being good. It looks like Darius might have taken another step. It's one practice that I've seen Darius Washington. But, clearly he profiles at tackle for Florida State. Last year it was, where does he play? This year it's, he's going to be one of your tackles. You don't move Julian Armella inside, and you don't have a situation like Robert Scott, not being available for spring. And we all knew that would have been a question mark anyway, just because of recent history. But you don't make a move and take a guy who could profile as a tackle and move him in unless you're counting on Byers to be good, unless you're really counting on Darius Washington to be your anchor. There's a little bit of snarl in his game on Tuesday that I found very nice to see. It's not that Darius isn't mean, but there was a couple of reps in one-on-ones where I took note that, oh man, okay, he's not here messing around. It's little things like that have, when you go see practice, it's little developments like that with players that stand out to me. The overall talent level of this team is good. This is the first time I walked out of practice, though. I think I briefly talked about this earlier, where I usually have a phone call back home, and I'm saying they're better. They're always better. This is the first time I'm not sure that this team is better than its predecessor, but they're larger. They're more grown up and they're deeper. So we'll see what they become, but this group is able to handle attrition in a way last year's wasn't. They've got waves of dudes at more positions.
Well, and I think last year's team was unlucky, and I'm just going to project they won't be as unlucky this year. Now, you think about what that means. I'm describing last year's team as incredibly unlucky in a lot of facets, in a lot of ways, and they went 13-0. If this team is more fortunate, less subject to dumb luck, a bad one at that, I think they can be better. And the schedule's tougher. So I think we have to take a look at the fact that, oddly, there's some games on this schedule that I didn't suspect at the time a couple of years ago or even a year ago that I looked ahead that I didn't think would be tough, that I think are tougher than I would have given them credit for a while back. Like, I think the SMU game on the road might be interesting. I think this first game against Georgia Tech is a lot more interesting than I would have projected it to be when it was announced. When it was announced, I was like, oh, get ready for a 50-point ass whoop in Ireland. You're about to watch a one-sided affair. I'm not so sure. I think Georgia Tech is going to present problems for us offensively, meaning their offense against our defense. And I think that they've done a lot. They went and got a Georgia linebacker. They went and got two other guys on defense from other programs that are, big-time players. So I think they're going to be wildly improved on defense. They were awful on defense a year ago. Now, will they be elite or even very good on defense? I don't know. I'm not a Georgia Tech insider. We'll see. I'll be reading carefully their practice reports because I want to see how much better they are. But I think they're really well coached and they're very experienced on offense. So I think that game could be kind of interesting into the third quarter. I think if we don't play well, and first games are always a little weird. Well, so,
I think that's the mark of this year where if you're talking about a variable, you've got so many new players, like they'll polish it up with what DJ is. They'll polish it up with the receiver rotation. They'll shrink that from, what they have now. Some guys are going to leave after spring, but you'll get to a place where there's a two deep that you like with starters that you can count on. Offensive line, same thing. I'm sticking with the offense here because that's the one that you need more pieces to come together to make it look fluid. Like defense, it's about reacting. Offense, you got to make it happen. And they'll have all these things polished up, but still the first game where DJ is in this system, the first real game where Malik Benson's a receiver for Florida State, and you might have two transfers starting for you at guard. You could have Richie Leonard and TJ Ferguson starting for you. Like there's just a whole lot of newness and a lot of guys from outside the program that when you face a team like Georgia Tech, if you're not buttoned up, yeah, you could be in a game in the second half. And it's just because of natural communication issues because you haven't been through it together. Like that's the sticky part about this early schedule for Florida State is as much work as they're about to do in spring camp and fall camp, there's still a learning curve that you cannot duplicate in practice and in camp, and they got to go through it together. It's a tough first game, and it's a tough first month. That SMU game is going to be difficult, I think.
Well, and I think when people hear me say that and we talk about the schedule, they'll be like, wait a minute, last year, guys, we started against LSU. I mean, you can't get tougher than that to start a year. It's true. But I think that on balance, there are more games that fall in the category this year of, we're favored in a vacuum. I like us to win every one of them. But the way the schedule plays out, you're like, okay, you could lose to Notre Dame on the road. You could lose to Miami on the road. You could lose at home to Clemson. You could struggle to win on the road against a really good and well-coached SMU team who's going to make that their Super Bowl. You got an elite quarterback, well, a very good quarterback and a very good offense in Memphis rolling into town. If you're not buttoned up there, you can have a problem. Georgia Tech and Ireland, which we just talked about, is not easy. I don't know what Florida's going to be this year. Their schedule's ruthless, so they may be broken by the time they play us. But Florida they've got athletes, and if they get quarterback play, it could be a problem. You're on the road at Duke, and a lot's changed there. Elko's gone, quarterback's gone. That shouldn't be a problem. If it were last year's Duke team on the road, I'd be like, well, it could be But you have a lot of those kinds of games. Now, it fell the way we wanted it to fall when they scheduled it. The breaks are in the right spots. When you play certain teams, fall in the right spots. There's no such thing as like loving every week of the season exactly the way you wanted it. But this is pretty close. Like if somebody gave our fans the teams that we have to play and said, put them in the order you want them with the breaks where you want them, you might get this schedule. We kind of got what we wanted here.
Yeah, I think you might play with a bye week later like November, but for the first 8-9 games of the year, it's pretty much the way it needs to be to put yourself in a position to succeed. But while that LSU game it's a better opponent that you're playing in week one, is the Heisman Trophy winning quarterback that you played in week one. The continuity, you didn't have to worry about communication. You didn't have to worry about star power, proven star power, comfort in the system. You had two linebackers extremely familiar with the system on defense. Your safety that's gone clearly made a difference when he was not on the field and when he was on the field. Nakeem Dent, he was there. Your star, Jared Verse, was there. Yeah, new guy in Braden Fisk. But in terms of new position, new responsibilities, defensive interior ain't exactly quarterback in terms of, the integrating into a system on the fly.
Yeah.
Jordan Travis was there.
That's the biggest one. You had a guy who's played a gazillion snaps for you at the most important position.
Right. And he's got the synergy with a Johnny Wilson that even if Keon ends up being a star of that game, but he knows where to go with the ball with people he's trusted and played with for years. And Trey Benson the same way. So it was all there, that was the benefit of the way that roster was constructed. It was all about retention from the battle's end. This is about sticking a landing with a whole lot of moving parts. It's not impossible. These are talented parts, but there's clunking that comes with that and should be expected to come with that.
A lot of good parts. You said it. Thank you, Battles In. A lot of really good parts.